What's going on, guys? Matt at Middleton Motorsports here, bringing you another episode of Behind the Tune. So behind me on the dyno today, we have a GT500. So this is a 2022 5.2 Predator, supercharged deal, obviously. And this car came to us with some mods done. So I'll jump up on the dyno deck here and we'll take a look. JLT cold air. This does have a VMP Predator lid and the Predator, the Apex Predator Race Intercooler. Stock pulley. Does have a set of long tube headers he just installed. Does have a SPE 170 thermostat. The headers, 2-inch headers I'm pretty sure, and they are hooked to the factory X-pipe and mufflers. So not a whole ton of stuff done to this car, but as you can see from video, if you've seen our videos in the past on these cars, it does not take much on these 2020 and up GT500s to make pretty decent power. And this car is on pump gas. So this guy does have a good 93 octane station near him. So he does run 93 octane with 10% ethanol. We do have a couple good 93 octane options in the Madison area where we are, Middleton, Madison, but they're few and far between. But if you can go out of your way to get it, it's actually on these cars and even on the boosted Coyotes, it does make a big difference. We've seen up to 50 horsepower at the rear tires on some of our Outlaw pickup trucks that we put superchargers on, the Gen 4 Coyotes. So he is running that good 93 in this car. So pretty basic setup. You know, like I said, intake. And if I didn't mention it, I probably didn't. It does have a ported supercharger. So VMP lid, intercooler, the blower is ported, stock pulley, headers, factory X, and mufflers. So, but again, all external stuff, nothing too crazy. Obviously we're not into, it still has a stock throttle body on it. And again, with these engines being what they are from the factory, the Predator 5.2 has really good oil pump from the factory. It's got a good bottom end from the factory. Valve train is really robust on these things, so we can put RPM in them. And that also does, you know, when I do a tune on these things and tune these things up, RPM plays a factor in how much power we can make. Because we can take them from the stock 7400, 7450 rev limiter to 83, 8400 is about where the factory valve springs are at their limit. So far where I'm at, 838, 589 torque. And you can kind of see the nature of the ported supercharger, how we are building power all the way out past 8,000. Now, again, like I said, I don't like revving these engines much past that. When you start putting pulleys on them from where this car's at, we got to drop this back even a little more, because as you add more boost, you put more boost pressure against the back of the valves, and that starts working against the valve spring pressure. So when we start talking valve springs on these motors, there is a limit on the factory valve springs. We do have quite a bit of way. You know, we can take them from the 7,500 up to this 83, 8,400, but I do have to limit it somewhere. And that's still pretty impressive for a factory engine to be able to raise the stock rev limit that much more. So yeah, that's where we're at so far. This guy does road race this car, so I'm keeping that in mind on the tune-up here for sure. And, you know, especially on the temperatures of when the fan kicks on, and you know, just doing my tuning, making sure that the engine is fully warmed up, the oil temperature is warmed up and everything when I'm doing my pulls. So I'm going to set the camera down. We're going to do one more pull on it, and then we can go in and take a look at a data log, and we'll get this car wrapped up. We'll get it off the dyno, go take it for a quick street drive, and we'll get this guy on his way. Alright guys, look like we backed that 838 up with an 840, 591 torque. See pretty much a dead overlay. Gave me a little bit more timing up in here in the mid-range and maybe a smidge more at the top versus that red run. I did let the car cool off for about 10 minutes. Starting to get a little warm here. So we're looking at about an 80-degree day today. So I was doing some back-to-back-to-back stuff. Again, making sure that the tune looked good with everything hot. And I had it sitting for maybe 10 minutes with the fan on it, just to kind of bring it back down to street temperatures. And so we could do one final pull and see where we're at with kind of some nominal street temperatures. So again, for just an external bolt-on car on pump 93, I'm pretty happy with that. That's looking really nice. So we can take a look at the log. Jump in the car here. Grab the laptop. All right, so for this car, I am, like any of these pump gas deals, I do let the HDFX timing setup system on these Fords. Sorry about that glare, guys. I'm always fighting that. Kind of do its thing. So we are seeing about 15 pounds of boost. Again, just the nature of revving these things another 1,000 RPM higher than stock, and the ported blower give us that extra couple pounds of boost over stock. Stock, you usually touch maybe just barely touching 13 at 7,400. Well, we're revving this to, I took that out to, what was the peak RPM here? See, I was right at 84, yeah, just over 8,400. I have the limiter set right there, so it's just barely off the limiter. The one thing you do lose with the ported blowers, you do lose some boost down in the bottom. Anything below 4,000 RPM, you are going to see a little bit of a boost loss with the ported blower with the stock pulley. And just because you're opening up the inlet of the stock supercharger, there's a kind of a air vein, I call it. It's kind of a triangle looking thing in the roof of the inlet of the supercharger. And the guys that port these things, the guy that we have port them, we have Jokers do it for us, he removes that and kind of opens the whole inlet up. So it does slow the airflow down at lower engine speeds and lower supercharger speeds, and that results in the rotors not being able to grab as much air. But once you get past about 4,500, the ported superchargers start to kind of make gains over factory. And once you get past 6,000 RPM, it's making a big difference, even on a stock pulley. When you start talking a 2.9, a 2.7 pulley, even smaller, as you go down in pulley size and spin the blower faster and faster, the gains of the ported blower over a unported blower will separate even lower and lower RPM. So when I'm talking, you're going to lose some boost down here, I'm talking with the stock supercharger pulley. And but for road race use, these guys, and me having owned one of these vehicles and road racing it, you're typically not, maybe some corners you're trying to climb out from about 4,000 RPM, but even then, these things have enough torque and power where you're into the traction control a lot of the times if you're on the stock Cup 2s. Obviously if you put a slick, I run Hoosier slicks on mine, you can get away with a little more, but it really doesn't affect much when you're losing down here for road racing and street. Now, if you're a drag race only type of guy, when we do port the blowers, typically we will pulley them, at least with a 2.9, as long as the fuel system will support it. But this being on pump gas, we have plenty of fuel system for this car on 93 octane. So yeah, that's kind of the deal with the boost in RPM. Timing, so you can see, again, when I'm logging in HP tuners, there's two different ways to log knock on the Fords. You can log the actual knock, which a positive amount will be actually pulling timing. I actually log the correction, so a positive amount's adding and a negative amount subtracting. So you can see here that high degree of freedom executive system that Ford uses for the timing is adding pretty much the whole way. We actually get kind of a big jump there, and you saw it in the dyno graph, kind of above 6,000, between 6,000 and 7,000. I had a decent amount of timing it was adding. And then that kind of fell off there towards the top, and it kind of came back down onto my factory tables, my factory borderline table, or I should say the borderline tables. So the other thing you might notice, and the way these HDFX systems learn, because this was the second pull on this tune and this flash, it usually takes a few pulls to get the timing from kind of doing that sawtooth pattern while it kind of learns where the timing needs to be. After you do some wide open throttle pulls through the gears, it actually will learn in, and this curve will smooth out a little bit, and it'll kind of learn where the timing wants to be. It's a pretty cool system. And obviously the air fuel ratio and the fueling on these cars is similar. running closed loop all the time. I do run them, the factory does this too. They run them a little bit leaner down in low RPM where the boost is a little lower, especially with the ported supercharger where you do reduce the boost a little bit. You can get away with a little bit leaner mixture down here below 4,000 RPM. And then once you get over 4,000, I'm running about I'm commanding about 0.75 lambda, and you can kind of see it's riding that line. Now, again, the fuel trims will actually learn what I'm commanding. It will learn the long terms. Now you can see as I'm pulling through here, you can see where I have that's a short term that's highlighted. So you can see it's pulling a little there, it's pulling a little there, it's adding a little there. It's really close to zero. I try to get these within 3%. I like to see anything plus or minus that. I'll usually make adjustments to the density model, the air density model, or the speed density model, I should say. Sorry, guys, I'm looking at this and kind of talking to you guys at the same time. This is looking pretty close. I mean, I'm plus or minus 3 degrees pretty much across the board here. So I'm happy with the way the fueling looks on this. The fuel pressure is holding nice and steady. These cars will, with the factory rails and injectors, when you start nearing the limits of the fuel system, you'll start getting some pretty big sawtoothing on the fuel pumps, and the air-fuel ratio will start getting unstable, and the injector pulse will get kind of out of whack. So this is looking pretty good as far as factory stuff. So again, pump gas, we're not taxing the fuel system too crazy here. So otherwise, everything else is looking good. You know, here I'm running, you know, my cylinder head temp is 192, coolant temp, like I said. This particular pull I did, this does have a thermostat in it, like I said. So this particular pull I was running, I wanted to run some street coolant and oil temperatures and cylinder head temperatures. So everything else, yeah, I mean, manifold temp, 101 at the top. That VMP lid and cooler, they do work very well. They keep these engines, or the superchargers, 20 to 30 degrees cooler on average over the stock lid and cooler. Even when you're just doing dyno pulls like this, or you're driving around the street in hot, in hot air, that lid and cooler works very well. And that's just not me selling VMP products, just me testing stuff out, and we run it on almost all of our builds because they work really good. Especially the guys that are road racing. We see a solid 30-degree manifold charge temperature drop on road race vehicles. You'll see with the stock lid and cooler, hot day, big tracks, even the short tracks, you'll be 150 plus degrees. The VMP stuff will run in the 120s. They work really good. So everything else looks pretty good. Just kind of looking at this, I stopped the Dyno Pull, stopped the logger. So as I'm talking to you guys here, I am kind of looking this log over to make sure I'm not seeing anything I don't like. But so far, everything is looking good. We are kind of up near, starting to get near the injector limit on this car, but not to the point of danger. We're just up near it. So yeah. That's looking good. Yeah, everything else looks pretty solid on this. So I'm gonna get this thing out, go take it for a little cruise on the road, make sure the drivability. I do transmission tuning on these too. Big thing on these cars is shift points. Obviously, we are extending the RPM range on the GT500s. As you can see, like on the dyno graph, I can actually show you a baseline on this car that we did at a dyno day when it just had the lid and cooler and cold air on it. And we can kind of look at the two versus now, the gains we picked up, that he picked up with the ported blower and the headers. But the transmission, like I said, I do raise the shift points at wide open throttle to around 7,900 versus 7,400. Just because we are, if you're in the automatic mode, when you put it into paddle mode, I still basically set them up so they will shift just before the rev limiter. So instead of touching the rev limiter, if you're in manual mode and you're waiting to make that shift, and for whatever reason you don't pull the paddle quick enough and it touches the rev limiter, I basically have it shift before it'll touch the rev limiter and kind of kill the car. Let's say you're in a race with somebody and maybe you're a little late on the paddle. Instead of hitting the rev limiter and killing your race, it's just going to shift. That's how I set these up. So In paddle mode, I'll set them up for 8,300. So right before the limiter, I have it at 8,400. So that's kind of how I set these up. Lots of other stuff in the tune-ups on these things. You know, I change when we do raise the RPM shift points and raise the rev limiter up like this, I'm changing the timing maps around, and I'm changing the scaling on the maps, scaling on the cam angles. Basically, you know, so revving it to 84 versus 74, you're covered as far as fueling and timing. So otherwise, this is looking really good. I feel like this car's pretty strong for what it is. And I'm gonna go out here and we're gonna open up the baseline, or somewhat of a baseline I had on this car. Like I said, I'm just gonna pull up that last run that you guys just saw on the Dyno 840. And I'm gonna pull up, this is a dyno day we had last summer. Sorry guys, I gotta get the camera on the screen, jeez. So that is kind of a baseline to what we just did. So the blue run, the car had a JLT, he had the JLT, the VMP lid, and the VMP cooler, and that was it. Still had the stock exhaust on it, still had the stock supercharger on it, unported supercharger. So like I said, and obviously now it's got the ported blower and the long tube headers, so both of those things are contributing. But you can see how neither one of those mods really does a whole lot. The headers alone would pick up a little bit of torque down here, but because the blower's ported, the torque's gonna maybe drop back down to about where he was. But you can see about 4,000 RPM, we start to pick up. And as you increase the RPM and you increase the blower speed, you can see the gains over. Now this drop here, because the blue run was a factory tune, that's where the cat enrichment, temperature enrichment kicks on. And from the factory, it runs that cat enrichment to about right here, to about 7,000, and then it kicks it back off, and you can kind of see how it swoops up here. So you're still getting a good comparison between the factory tune. Again, the cat enrichment's shut off right about here in this little area from 72 to 74. So we're still getting a pretty big jump in power. You can actually turn the cursor on, and we can kind of get a comparison. So 796 to 729. So that's a 65 horsepower, 67 horsepower gain there. You know, so we're up, yeah, that's almost 70 horsepower. So it's picked up a pretty big chunk of power up at the top here. You know, obviously once you get it over 5,000 RPM, this is a pretty big, significant gain with the ported blower and the headers. Again, with the ported blower, really what the ported blower does, it obviously makes the blower a little more efficient up top and grabs more air. But for the guys that want to put pulleys on them and they really want to make some big top end power, that's really where the ported blowers shine once you start pulling them. Obviously you do get a gain with the stock pulley, and it is a significant gain, but the pulling them is where you'll really see a separation between a stock unported supercharger and the ported supercharger. But besides all that, this is looking really nice, and I just want to kind of show you guys the difference between where it was and where it is now. So we picked up, you know, if you want to call it, we picked up 110 horsepower at the rear tires. Again, the torque jump's only about 20 foot-pounds, but like I said, because the ported blower, we're kind of losing some of that mid-range, you know, and in the mid-range here from 4 to 5,500, the ported blower doesn't really do a whole lot. But the combination of the three, the headers, the ported blower, and the tuning, those three combined is where we're getting this big jump in power. You know, when you add all three of those things together over where we were on that blue run, that's why we are seeing this big jump in power. And obviously, because now we can rev it versus here, we have that extra range up here. So then our shift recovery is going to come back higher up, and we're running the engine in a little higher RPM range, and it's making more power throughout that higher RPM, you know, to where we're shifting to the recovery. But with all that being said, that's our final curve. I did have some stuff that was a little higher and a little lower, but I was playing with some timing and fueling, but this is where the tune is safe, and this is the final. I'm going to call this the final. So 840, 591. So that'll wrap it up for this one on the dyno. I got more cars coming down the pipeline here. I got to get up on the dyno here yet this afternoon. So I'm busy for the rest of the evening on the dyno here. So I'm going to get this car pulled off, and then we're going to take it for a ride, and it'll wrap it up for this one. So thanks for watching the episode, guys, and we'll talk to you guys later.